Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Hari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Hari Yashodanandana Brajadanarandana Yashodanandana Brajadanarandana Jamuna Tiravana Tari Jamuna Tiravana Tari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Hari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Hari Yashodanandana Brajadanarandana Yashodanandana Brajadanarandana Jamuna Tiravantari Jamuna Tiravantari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Gaura Pimanandi, Dang Vishnupada Paramahamsa, Pri Vrajagacharya Stotra Satta, Sri Simal, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhai Charanarvinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki, ISKCON DBT, Founder Charya's Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, Harinam Sankirtana Ki, Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki, Jainitai Gaura Pimanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and to Sri Gauranga, all glories to Sri Prabhupada. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Taksurandiritam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Sya Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakanvitam Sya Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostite Taptakan Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaevascha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Shaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat. Before reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, let us first offer our respectful obeisances unto Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremmost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayesha badreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati utamashloke bhaktir bhavati naistiki. By regularly hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering a service unto the pure devotee, all that is troublesome within the heart becomes destroyed practically to nil, and loving devotional service unto the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahmasamitam Utamashloka Charitam Chakara Bhagavan Rishi Nishreyasaya Lokasya Dhanyam Swastayanam Mahat. This Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Grantaraj, the king of all Vedic literatures, is the literary incarnation of God. It is compiled by the incarnation of God, the Srila Vyasadeva. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people. It is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Surabhyaya Namaha. Om Surabhyaya Namaha. Om Surabhyaya Namaha. Mukam karoti vasalam pangum langayate girim yatkripa tamaham bande Shri Gurum Dinataranam yatkripa tamaham bande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. Hare Krishna. Welcome to our Bhagavatam class, continuing today from canto number 2, chapter 2, text number 7. Yes. Kas tam tu anadritya paranuchintam rite pashun asatim nama kuryat pashyan janam patitam vaitaranyam sva karmajan paritapan jushanam kastam tvanadritya paranuchintam rite pashun asatim nama kuryat pashyan janam patitam Vaitaranyam
Janam patitam vetaranyam
Swakarmajam Paritapan Jusanam
Jnana paritapanjushanam
Kastam Tvanadritya Para Nuchintam
Kastam tvanadritya paranuchintam
Rite Pashun Asattim Namakuryat
Te pashuna sattim nama kurya
Pashyan Janam Patitam Vaitaranyam
Janam patitam vetaranyam
Swakarmajam Paritapan Jusanam
Karmajana paritapasujam
Kastam Tvanadritya Paranuchintam
Vanadritya paranuchintam
Rite Pashun Asatim Namakuryat
Te pashunastim nama kuryat
Pashyan Janam Patitam Vaitaranyam
Shyam janam patitam vetaranyam
Swakarmajam Paritapan Jushanam
Karmajana paritapam jusanam Kastam tvanadvitya paranuchintam
Kastam Tvanadritya Paranuchintam
Vite pashuna satim nama kuryat
Rite Pashum Asatim Nama Kuryat
Pashya janam patitam vetaranyam
Pashyanjanam Patitam Vaitaranyam
Svakarmajana paritapana jusanam
Sakarmajam Paritapan Jusanam Kaha. Who else? Tam, that, to, but, anadritya, by neglecting, para anuchintam, transcendental thoughts, rite, without, pashun, the materialists. There's a word pashu. Pashu means animal, right? Pashu means animal. Yeah. Pashu means materialist. I think there's some connection. Satim, in the non-permanent. Nama, name. Kuryat, will adopt. Pashyan, seeing definitely. Janam, the general mass of people. Patitam, fallen. Vaitaranyam, in Vaitarani, the river of suffering. Swakarmajan, produced from one's own work. Paritapan, suffering. Dushanam, being overtaken by. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Who else but the gross materialists will neglect such transcendental thought and take to the non-permanent names only, seeing the mass of people fallen in the river of suffering as the consequence of accruing the result of their own work. Can you repeat after me? Who else but the gross materialists will neglect such transcendental thought
neglect such transcendental thoughts
and take to the non-permanent names only,
and take to the non-permanent names only,
seeing the mass of people
seeing the mass of people
fallen in the river
fallen in the river
of suffering
of suffering
as the consequence
as the consequence
of accruing the result
of accruing the result
of their own work.
of their own work.
Purport. In the Vedas, it is said that persons who are attached to demigods to the exclusion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are like the animals who follow the herdsman even though they are taken to the slaughterhouse. The materialists, like animals, also do not know how they are being misdirected by neglecting the transcendental thought. By neglecting the transcendental thought of the Supreme Person. No one can remain vacant of thought. It is said that an idle brain is a devil's workshop because a person who cannot think in the right way must think of something which may bring about disaster. If we don't learn to think in the right way, we will think in the wrong way. And the result of thinking in the wrong way will bring us to disaster. Yeah, because we will neglect our prime responsibility of life. The materialists are always worshipping some minor demigods. Most materialists now don't even worship demigods. Although this is condemned in the Bhagavad Gita 7:20, as long as a person is illusioned by material gains, he petitions the respective demigods to draw some particular benefit, which is, after all, illusory and non-permanent. The enlightened transcendentalist is not captivated by such illusory things. Therefore, he is always absorbed in the transcendental thought of the Supreme in different stages of realization, namely Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. In the previous verse, it is suggested that one should think of the Supersoul, which is one step higher than the impersonal thought of Brahman, as it was suggested in the case of contemplating the Virat Rupa of the Personality of Godhead. Intelligent persons who can see properly may look into the general conditions of the living entities who are wandering in the cycle of the 8,400,000 species of life, as well as in different classes of human beings. It is said that there is an everlasting belt of water called the river Vaitarani at the entrance of the Plutonic planet of Yamaraj, who punishes sinners in different manners. After being subjected to such sufferings, a sinner is awarded a particular species of life according to his deeds in the past. Such living entities as are punished by Jamaraj are seen in different varieties of conditioned life. And some of them are in heaven, and some of them are in hell. Some of them are brahmanas, and some of them are misers, kripana. But no one is happy in this material world. And all of them are either class A, B, or C prisoners, suffering because of their own deeds. The Lord is impartial to all circumstances of the sufferings of the living entities. But to one who takes shelter at his lotus feet, the Lord gives proper protection, and he takes such a living entity back home, back to Godhead. A translation again. Who else but the gross materialists will neglect such transcendental thought and take to the non-permanent names only, seeing the mass of people fallen in the river of suffering as the consequence of accruing the result of their own work. Yes. We've been reading yesterday and the day before reference to we're living in a world of names. We are attracted to the artificial and neglecting what Prabhupada was referring to as the substance. The substance means the essence of life. And here there's a very clear warning that such persons who are referred to here as gross materialists they will fall in the river. This Prabhupada translates this Vaitarani as a river of suffering. We know there are different planetary systems, and references being made here to Pluto. Pluto is hellish planet, which was unknown actually to modern science up until I think sometime during the 20th century. They go on discovering different stars or different planets. We know from the fifth canto in the Bhagavatam the description of the hellish planets. There are many different types of hellish planets according to the various sinful activities committed by the living entities. So Prabhupada is making the point here that actually even people who may qualify to go to the heavenly planets, they will not be happy. There is no permanent happiness anywhere within this material world. And we are being informed here also by Srila Prabhupada that those who are intelligent enough to take shelter of the Lord, they receive, they become directly under the guidance of the Lord, or they become protected by the Lord. Whereas those who choose to take shelter of Krishna's external energy, or the world of Maya, then they are subjected to the laws of material nature. Law of material nature is very, very, very strict and totally totally beyond our control. We have no control. It is referred to as the stringent laws of material nature. Every single moment, all living entities in the material world are subjected to these stringent laws of nature. The kala, the time factor, every moment is influencing all of us. And so that is the unfortunate condition of what is referred here again, the gross materialists. Gross materialists means those who are totally on the bodily platform. And that's why, especially in Kali Yuga, we see Kali Yuga is that period in the history where those living entities who have been especially on this gross materialistic platform, they suffer the results of their previous activities. So therefore we see so much suffering in the world today. We can, suffering is always there in the material world, but when one chooses to follow the path of dharma, that suffering actually becomes reduced. One learns to transcend. Actually, this is the end result of someone who practically takes shelter of Krishna's Daivi Prakriti. In due course of time, one learns to transcend not only the modes of material nature, but one learns to transcend the threefold miseries of life. Everyone in the material world is completely under the grips and the tight control of the modes of material nature, as well as the threefold miseries of life, isn't it? But one who takes to the recommended process, one who takes shelter of Lord Krishna, he has the opportunity to completely become disconnected or disassociated with the modes of material nature, which ultimately keeps one in ignorance, and in that ignorant condition one commits all kinds of sinful activities, for every single sinful activity, either knowingly or unknowingly committed, one must suffer. We're living in a world of suffering, Mrityu Loka, planet of death, or the world of birth, death, old age, and disease. So therefore, the need to cultivate this knowledge and avoid the types of suffering that are awaiting all living entities who are caught up in this way, in this material world. Even the worship of demigods, that's also mentioned here, is condemned. Means anything that is connected with something material. Most people worship demigods for some material purpose or for some material benefit. Yes. So that translation again here. Who else but the gross materialists will neglect such transcendental thought? Which was referred to in the previous verse. Yeah. Who else but the gross materialists will neglect such transcendental thought and take to the non-permanent names only? Seeing the mass of people fallen in the river of suffering as a consequence of accruing the result of their own work. And so this is directly a reference to the words spoken yesterday. Thus, being fixed, one must render service unto the Supersoul situated in one's own heart by his omnipotency, because he is the almighty personality of Godhead, eternal and unlimited. He is the ultimate goal of life, and by worshiping him, one can end the cause of the conditioned state of existence. Yeah. Thoughts or comments on this?
Devotee who is practicing devotion service.
A devotee?
The problems because of his past karma, or how you can understand. Sometimes like devotee goes through very deadly.
Okay, whether what is happening to devotee is because of his past karma. Is it? There are two factors at work. Definitely, before becoming a devotee, we are completely 100% under the influence of modes of material nature, and we are living out our karmic reaction. So the question comes, okay, then if one becomes a devotee, that should change. But we see that still devotees are experiencing various difficulties. So whether that is also result of previous sinful activities or something else. That is explained actually by Srila Rupa Goswami, that although when one takes the devotional service, he turns off the switch. It's like, the fan is, that example is given. When the switch is on, the current is going through and the fan is turning. As long as we don't turn the switch off, it will continue. So as long as we continue in our material way of life, materialistic way of thinking, we will get karmic reaction. So when we turn off the switch of the fan, although the current is no longer going, but we see that the fan will turn for some time, isn't it? So that explanation is given, that even though we may take the devotional service, some residue of karmic reaction is there. It's also explained how the results for a devotee, for someone who surrenders, are very much minimized. So that is one answer actually to the question. We have no idea actually how one just hearing or just reading recently how one prayer whereby it explains how, oh my Lord, please engage me in your service so that the Mount Sumeru reactions to my sinful activities. In other words, we have no idea, no conception how many sinful activities we have committed previously, how much of karmic reaction we have accumulated is compared to Mount Meru. Mount Meru. And although taking up to spiritual life, so many explanations are there, whereby by chanting the holy name, by worshipping Tulasi Devi, by circumambulating Tulasi Maharani, it destroys huge amounts of sinful activities. Sometimes it explains all sinful activities are, burnt up. So it's a combination of two things. There's a residue of sinful reactions. That is one explanation or one reason why, even as devotees, we see everyone, even one may be practicing very seriously for so many years, still gets diseased, still the aging process is eating away. The suffering is there. But that suffering is minimized, and sometimes that suffering is not, that's also explained by our acharyas, suffering is not always due to karmic reaction. Krishna will sometimes put his devotee in a suffering condition. Prabhupada explains, our acharyas explain, that happens to, the Lord wants to demonstrate or to show to the world that my real devotee, under any circumstances, he will not waver. So to actually glorify the position of the devotee, of the surrendered devotee, one who is fully surrendered, under any circumstance he will always remain faithful and convinced of the Lord's mercy. Just like the wonderful prayers of Queen Kunti. The Pandavas were put into so many great difficulties, yet she prays to Lord Krishna when the Lord, after the battle of Kurukshetra, is returning to Dwarka. All the residents of Hastinapur are in great anxiety that the Lord will not be with them. And especially Kunti Devi offers very wonderful prayers. And in offering those prayers, she expresses how, my dear Lord, better you keep us in difficulty. Better you send more and more calamities. This way we will always think of you. This way we will develop this feeling of surrender. We want to surrender more. Because actually that's what happens, isn't it? In the material world, people who have their different material necessities nicely met, people who have seemingly less problems, they tend to not think about everything's okay. What's the problem? I mean, many people, due to karma, they have a good situation. They have no problem making money. They have a good health. They have good friends. Life is wonderful. You see. So even ourselves as devotees, when, let's say, when our body is healthy, we when everything is going well, we tend to forget Krishna. We tend, but Krishna reminds us at different times. Yeah. So we should not have to be put in these kinds of trying situations to think about the Lord. So that so for devotee, we know that as long as we will be here in the material world, there will be difficult situations, but as devotees, by cultivating this knowledge of Krishna consciousness, and by knowing that the Lord is there within our hearts, we have the ability. Krishna can give us the ability. By ourselves, actually, we cannot. But by the mercy of Krishna and the mercy of the Vaishnavas, we're able to confront and deal with all the different situations. So whether it's still due to karma or whether it is the desire of Krishna that we are put into such difficulties.
I have one question, Bharat, on this
Yeah.
topic. Like when I hear, means when I read some scripture or story of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and devotees, great devotees.
Mm.
So when they went to any temple or see the Vigraha of Lord,
Yeah.
they have such affection with the Lord. Like when I hear about the Lord Chaitanya, when he goes somewhere in the temple, so his body becomes very hot, like
Yes.
burning, and he fell on the stones, the stone also becoming melt. So such type of affection we have seen in some devotees also.
Mm.
When they meet the Lord, so they feel just like they cry, they have such type of love. But when like us, means like I and fallen souls go to the south, because when I'm in Mumbai, so I think I will go and meet to Radha Madhav and Maharaj. But when I came here, so it's looks like a normal. So I also thinking why this type of affection is not coming in me. Why I'm not trying? Why?
Yes.
So,
Yeah, so we see in the examples of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and other many of his associates, when they are taking darshan of the Lord, they experience transcendental ecstasy. And why not me? why is not happening to me? So the idea is that it can happen and will happen to anyone who takes up nicely, properly to the process of devotional service. Because they are situated on that very high, exalted, transcendental platform, transcendental realization. So they don't, we see the Archa Vigraha form in a material way, you see, because of our yet sufficiently purified level of consciousness. So it is simply based on consciousness and a level of purification. So as one becomes, just like before we joined as devotees, we were so much covered that so many things we could not understand. how to be clean, for example, washing our hands before we take meal and after we take meal, simple practical things. After becoming devotees, then so many things like this we gradually came to know and started to practice. Non-devotees, they like to sleep in the morning, But as devotees, we learn to get up early because we have to worship the Lord. So we may not be completely spontaneous in doing that, but we do it initially out of duty and responsibility, and gradually we develop some attraction and some feeling. So the more one becomes purified in consciousness by applying the process, then Krishna will grant us also this opportunity to, we could say, to experience Him in different ways, either by having His darshan in the temple, or by performing different activities. So it's a question of purified consciousness. The more one's consciousness is purified, then the more one will experience what we read about, let's say, in the Shastra. But it's not only what we read about in the Shastra. We see, like Prabhupada's example also, although a devotee is not, that's also nicely explained in the Vedic literatures, that a devotee is cautious not to exhibit ecstatic emotions, isn't it? Prabhupada very rarely, but he did on a number of occasions, because personalities like Srila Prabhupada, advanced devotees, their mind is very, very deeply absorbed in what they are thinking and what they are doing, and therefore, at times, it becomes like overwhelming, isn't it? Yeah. So that cannot be forced or imitated, but we know from the instructions of our acharyas, if one simply continues to properly apply the process, then that's also nicely, elaborately described in the Nectar of Devotion. From the lower levels or beginning levels of bhakti, from sadhana bhakti, then one will gradually enter these higher levels of more natural and more spontaneous raganuga bhakti. And it is in those higher levels that one will at times experience something similar to what we read about in the Shastra. But we should not be overly anxious for that, Prabhupada gives the example, we've heard it before, when someone, gets married, the wife cannot demand to the husband that I want a child today. I want to have a baby today. In due course of time, she will become pregnant, and then she has to wait also certain. So everything has its time, depending on two factors, depending on how we properly apply the process, number one, and secondly, depending on the response or the Lord's mercy is the other factor needed there. Okay, Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai Srila Prabhupada ki. Hare Krishna. Somehow, yeah. And somebody has to learn how to close it. And that's it, huh? You just close it.